Rolling.
Happy birthday, Kenny. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for your party, at least not in person. So I came up with this as a way that I could at least still have a Buzzkill influence, if by not being there in person. It is a momentous occasion. You're 30 years upon the earth, and you see these gray hairs. Most of them are thanks to you. I was asked to give some perspective about what you were like as a baby and a young child and as you were growing, and what it was like to be Mama Dellinger, the mama, like the show you used to love to watch, the dinosaurs. So I have put together a few pictures. Some I don't have that I wish I had, but we're going to illustrate sort of like your progress. This is a picture of your brothers, prior brothers, holding you when you were just a little infant. And one of my favorite things about this picture is you don't necessarily look pleased to be in the grouping. This is a picture of you in your bouncy seat. And I always enjoyed this picture, this series of pictures, because if you can see the look in your eye, I knew right from that moment I had a Hellraiser on my hands, because to me this look reminds me of Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver, looking into the mirror and going, "You talking to me?" You've got that same look in your eye. And here's a close-up, only here you've accompanied it with a smile, so it's a mixed sort of thing. You were always a very mischievous child, a very happy child, a very active child, and you had a gorgeous smile, and you had a love of activity, and you were a very early fan of superheroes. And here you are. I had to show this in the Green Lantern shirt. I think you would have been a much better Green Lantern than Ryan Reynolds. Of course, a major part of your life is being a brother, and here you are with the object of your years of torment and sadism. This is Terry as Superman and you as Green Lantern. You did take one picture where you actually looked angelic. I had to show this because it's the only moment in your life when you approached being a blonde, and an angelic blonde at that. This is Kenny, very cleaned up, haircut, hair done, and everything else. This is the same occasion, and he's with Steve and Jeff here. And here they are, all five of them, I believe. No, four of the five of them. Jeff is absent. And as you can see, we did employ cages. It was necessary. And not always just because of the dogs. And here is the angelic sleeping Kenny. I wanted to make put some perspective on Kenny's life. He is the fourth of five brothers. Prior to Kenny, we had never had a child who needed to go to the emergency room for anything, let alone stitches. We had a total of 28 boy years. Jeff was 10, Matt was 9, Steve was 7, when Kenny was between 2 and 3, and he required stitches because he was being tossed around by his older brothers like he was a medicine ball. And one of them did not make the best possible catch, and Kenny landed with his forehead on the corner of the wooden bed frame and split open his forehead. I believe he was about maybe 14 months or a little older at that point. Jeff would know because Jeff was one of the ones tossing him. We rushed him to the hospital. We sat in the waiting room waiting for them to call his name to get stitches. And in the meantime, Kenny would not sit still. He was climbing up on the chairs, the empty chairs in the waiting room, and then literally leaping off of them. So the nurses did not do the normal questioning about how he came to have a split open forehead because they already knew it wasn't my fault. Kenny had stitches in his forehead in a diagonal line like tic-tac-toe 3 times between the ages of 14 months and 3 years old. The second time, and it's rather pertinent with the Olympics being on, when he was about 2 years old, he became enamored of Greg Louganis, the diver, particularly the platform diving. Now, we had a hearth in our family room fireplace that was like this and had a drop-off. It was kind of a raised brick hearth fireplace. And Kenny began trying to emulate his hero, Greg Louganis, and he'd stand on the fireplace backwards facing and go right to his toes and then leap off and try to do a loop. Unfortunately, he did that poorly one time, and meeting his forehead to the brick is what caused the second set of stitches. The third set of stitches was he was getting in the mood for Halloween, and while I was doing laundry in that self-same family room with that self-same fireplace, threw a sheet over his head and was wandering around, tripped, and forehead meets edge of bricks, and another trip to the hospital. There was a point in time where they were considering putting Kenny's name on the St. Vincent emergency room, but I think there was one kid that beat him out in terms of frequency of treatment. I happen to believe that Kenny is, I would say, a very spiritual old soul, and he showed flashes of pretty deep wisdom, and one of them had to do with a dog that we had briefly, or I should say Jeff had. Jeff, I'm sure you'll remember Cody. I'm not sure Kenny will because he was very young, but Cody was a dog that we'd gotten from a shelter, and he was Jeff's dog. And at one point in a summer, very hot, not quite as hot as we're having here in Indianapolis this year, we went to the Pike Library to see a short film, and we left Cody out in the backyard on a chain. He had shade, he had a bowl of water, but something happened, and when we got home, unfortunately, Cody was in the final throes of dying from heat stroke. And we put him in the car, we rushed him to the vet and tried to save him, but were unable to. And I'm not sure why Kenny had a helium balloon in the house, but he did. And when we got home after losing Cody, he went and got the balloon and released it up into the air and let it go. And I asked him why he did that, and he said, Cody loved that balloon so